Hello there and welcome to another video detailing the basics of chess. In this video I'll be trying my best to teach you about check and checkmate, the most important aspects of the game. In chess, the main goal of the game is to keep your king safe all while attacking the other king and checkmating him, which is trapping the king while keeping it attacked. So here we have a position where the king is in check. As you can see, the queen is attacking the king and cutting off these squares. The king has to do something, otherwise it will continue to be under attack and will get captured. So, however, check is not unstoppable, and there are three ways you can do to get out of check. The first one is to move away. So in this position, the king has 3 squares to go to. It can go to either this one, the ones I'm drawing arrows to, or this one. These squares will keep it free from being checked, and will allow it to continue. So now I have an example for you. I want you to try it out. What is the best way to get if you were going to move your king now and get it out of check, how would you do it? I'll give you some time to think about it. So the king just has to move to get out of check, and the squares that are controlled by the queen right now are the squares I've highlighted in the red arrow now. So the king can, in the end, go to either any one of these 4 squares, sorry. So, for example, if you went back here, you would be out of check and you could continue on with the game. We have another example here where the king is in check, but as I said, the 3 methods to stopping check, and this is the second method, which is called blocking. So when you block checks, you use another piece to block the check, and then you can continue on with your game. Here the knight is blocking the queen. As we can see, the king is in check now, and then once you move your knight back, you block the queen, and then the game will continue. So here I have a position for you. Right now the white king is in check, and if you were going to block, how would you stop the bishop? There are a couple of moves you can do here. So your 3 best moves right here are the one from blocking with the pawn. So for example, if you were gonna block with this pawn, then the bishop would have to move back, because using a bishop to capture a pawn, and if the bishop's gonna because the pawn is protected, and if you use the bishop to capture the pawn, it's gonna be captured right back, and as we know, bishops are more valuable than pawns, so you wouldn't want to lose one of the bishops just for a pawn. Another move you could do here is move your bishop to block. Now the bishop would have to move back or exchange the bishop. The last move you could do here is block with the knight. This follows the same principles as the blocking with the bishop, except you don't have to move back because the bishop's not being attacked. There is another option, which is blocking with the queen, but as we know, queens are worth 9 points and bishops are only worth 3 points. So usually a player would be happy to take the queen with his bishop, because he would get more material than the other player. So the last way of blocking check is to capture the piece that is checking you. For example, in this position, the black king is in check again, and however, instead of moving or blocking, you have the option of taking the queen, which gets you out of check and wins you a piece. In this position, black is down a piece and is in check. If you were going to take the piece, how would you take it? I'll give you a few seconds to decide. So if you got the move correct, it is taking the bishop with the pawn. This keeps the game going and it gets you out of check while regaining your piece. Now we will be discussing checkmate. Checkmate is where the king doesn't have any moves to go, doesn't have any places to go where he's not in check. For example, in this position, the king is in check right here by the queen, and you cannot block it because the queen is right next to the king. You can't move away because all four of these squares are controlled by the queen. And of course, since the king is protecting the queen, you cannot take the queen because kings can never meet on the chessboard. And if there's only 2 kings on the chessboard, it is a draw, which I'll talk about later. Here's another example of a checkmate. Here the king cannot move away, cannot run away, because the only square he has is to go here, and the queen simply controls it. And it cannot block the piece again because the queen is right next to the king. And the king cannot capture the queen because the bishop is guarding the queen. This is the last example of a checkmate I have for you. So by taking the rook here, black is now in checkmate. It cannot run away because his own pawns are blocking the king, and the other 2 squares are controlled by the rook. And then it cannot. There are no pieces to block because pawns cannot move backwards, and the queen is too far away to do anything. And of course, there's nothing to take the rook with because the pawn, again, as I said, pawns can't capture backwards, and the queen isn't close enough to capture. So now I thought I'd give you some practice. So here's the first position. Right now, the white can checkmate the black king. I'll give you a few seconds to think about the move. For those of you who are able to do it, the move is queen capturing on the square right next to the king. This puts the king in checkmate because he cannot run away because his only square is guarded by the queen. The bishop is guarding the queen, so he cannot take it. And there's nothing to block with because the queen is right next to the king. Here's the second position I have for you. White again has checkmate in 1 move. So feel free to try figuring out. There are 2 different types of checkmates on the board. You can use either one of them. So the one of the 2 checkmates is moving the queen right next to the king to attack it. Since the queen is protected by the king, the black king cannot capture it, and the queen is covering all of these squares. So the black king is nowhere to go, and there's nothing to block with because the queen is on the square right beside the king. I said there were 2 checkmates, and the other checkmate is queen down to checkmate the king this way. The black king cannot block because there are no pieces that can get to that square immediately. The rook is too far away. The white king controls all 3 of these squares, and the white queen delivers the check. The last checkmate I have for you is an interesting one. Right now, white has the opportunity to checkmate black in 1 move. I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. So, for those who found out the move is white capturing the rook on the rank on the right, on the checking the king, on the rank checking the king. Since again the pawns are stopping the king from moving to one of these squares, and the rook is checking the king, blocking of these two squares as well. And there are no pieces to block because pawns cannot move backward, and there aren't any pieces that can capture the rook. So this is a checkmate. So I hope you got something out of this video, and you can use check and checkmates in your later games to help you progress to become a better chess player.